Hey, I'm Decathlon Gamer, and welcome back to Zwift Fitness Journey. So last time out, I mentioned that in order for this fitness journey to make sense, and in order for it to work, for it to function, fitness is very personal and it's very unique individually for everyone. So for you to be able to relate to my journey, you kind of have to know where I'm coming from. And so I decided that I was going to be an open book for this series. So just simply knowing that I'm 39, knowing that I'm 5'6", which is 172 centimeters for those who use metric, which is just about everybody, 80 kilograms, 179 pounds. I mean, that information alone, well, it's helpful for you to know my journey, but it's far from enough to know where I'm going. Now, of course, the main purpose of this series is about where I'm going, not where I'm at right now. It's where I want to be and the process and the journey of getting there. But to know how I got to this point is going to make a world of difference for you and for me to get it out there. So if we're talking about like a personal journal, something you would keep on your nightstand, this is the kind of information that would end up in there. My topic for today is my fitness history. How did I get to be as tall as I am, as big as I am, or not so big? Because to be honest, the data, I'm right in between overweight and obese, right on the borderline between the two. So I'm definitely not at the level of fitness I want to be at. Now, I don't need to be a super athlete. I'm 39 years old. I'm not out to go do fitness shows or compete. I'm past that age, but I do play soccer a couple times a week, football. Yeah, I want to be in good shape for that because it's something I want to continue to do for decades if I can stay healthy. No more torn calf muscles like a few years ago. A lot of it's just about feeling good and living longer. So I'm from the U.S., and in the U.S., of course, we have this history of obesity being a pretty massive problem. So compared to the average American, I'm average when it comes to my weight and my level of fitness. In fact, I'm probably better than 50% in terms of average. So, not in terrible shape, but I'm certainly not where I want to be. In the last episode, I was on the bike, pedaling my heart out, gasping for air. You are going to get plenty of that, and we have now cut to that. But we're also going to do a combination this episode. I'm trialing a few different presentation styles. After experimenting with them, after presenting all of them, I'll go ahead and run a poll probably next week and see what you think, what style you prefer, and kind of where to go long term with this series. Today we're trialing a totally different style in that I'm going to do mostly voiceover with some face cam. That way I can actually get the words out, get the message out cleanly, and then of course still have the writing in the background. So the first thing you need to know about my fitness history is my family history, because as we all know, your family history makes a huge difference on how you turn out. First off, even though I'm only 5'6", 172 centimeters, I'm the tallest person in my immediate family. But my family has a history of obesity. And not just overweight, but definite obesity. I was the only one that was on that opposite end of the spectrum. Now, the reason for that was, as old as I am, video games were just coming in. So I'm young enough to have gotten to experience them and to get into them, to grow up with them, but on a limited scale. And I'd spend the rest of my time outdoors, playing, having fun. That activity turned into a love of sports. That love of sports turned into a year-long love affair. Now, my family didn't have a lot of money, and so they couldn't afford to put me on the expensive travel teams where you really commit to a single sport and go year-round and play every day. But what I did do, and what I was able to do, was I was able to have a sport year-round. It rotated on what sport it was, season by season, but I was always participating. Now, the main sports that I participated in: soccer, football, American football, baseball, basketball, track. Those were the sports that as a kid I grew up playing. So, despite my family having a problem with obesity, I did not. Now, the reason why they had the problem with obesity was, in general, in America, we have a very high calorie intake, kind of a baseline. And especially in the 90s, which was the time where I was growing up, we really got into some processed foods, fast food. And that became a norm. And huge portions. Did you ever see Super Size Me? That was legit. That was how it was. That caloric intake is what did the rest of my family in. My being young, having high metabolism at the time, and being super active kept me fit. When I was 18, I joined the Army. That was the most fit I ever was in my entire life, and by far, leaps and bounds beyond anything else I experienced. By the time I got out of basic training, I was on the presidential fitness list with a 290 of a maximum 300 in the Army physical fitness test. The 90 being on the run. I was really, really good at the push-ups, really good at the sit-ups. The run, just enough. You needed a 90 or better in each. I did the 2 mile in a shade under 13 minutes. Not a great time. The distance running was not exactly my strong suit. And it kind of relates to the cycling, the endurance piece. Building that endurance is what I've always been a little bit on the shorter end of. Things were great. Fitness was great. And then I got hurt. I was 3 years into my time in the military. I had served through 9/11 and all the changes that came soon after around the world. And in a training accident, my L4, L5, the discs got crushed. One shot out one side, one shot out the other side. The official diagnosis on those was bulging discs with a slipped disc. And my spine itself was still intact, but slight fractures. I ended up with permanent damage from that, and I also ended up with a medical discharge from that. I also ended up in a position where fitness was so not a thing. I was grateful to be walking. So my life went through this massive change where I went from as fit as you can be to zero exercise. And again, the just walking and then eventually jogging. I was grateful to just be able to do that. So over the next couple of years, the extreme level of fitness that I had went away. I was not overweight. I had no issues with that. The amount of muscle mass decreased, but I wasn't adding fat or anything like that. I wasn't eating horribly. As soon as I could, I got active again, at least in the limited capacity that I could. The biggest thing that I was doing over that period of time was I picked up a paper route and was delivering newspapers in the middle of the night. Even though I was using my car to get from place to place, I'd get out of my car and run up to each and every doorstep that I was delivering papers to. And so I got a lot of jogging in that way. That was enough at that time, and I was still young enough at that time, only 21, 22 years old, that I still had good metabolism, and it added up. My fitness was nothing like before, and I was dealing with constant back issues. And then I headed to college, and that's where my story started to take a turn. In the US, we call it the freshman 15. For me, it was the freshman 10. Now, the basis behind that one is you head off to college, you get out from under your parents' home, where you eat a consistent diet that often you're not the one who prepares, and then suddenly you're on your own. You're buying food for yourself, you're fending for yourself, you're also dedicating your time to your studies yourself, and you're also dedicating time to friends and partying and beer, and ultimately for I don't know what the percentage is, but let's say 90% of freshmen in college, they start packing on some pounds. It happens with most. Huge majority. And normally it's about 15 pounds, and that's why they call it the freshman 15. Well, for me, it was about 10 pounds that year. and it was probably 10 pounds of ramen and beer. I steadied off for the next couple of years, stayed the same. I that 15 pounds was almost nothing. I was still pretty fit. I went from a good amount of fitness to just being pretty normal on that. No sign of weight issues at all, but just not the nice fitness that I had had before. Also, during that time, during those 3 years, I was able to get a little more active. One, I was playing co-ed softball. I tried baseball. I tried getting into the batting cages, and the torque necessary to get your back, to get your hips back and shoulders to swing through as you're trying to catch up to a fastball. The pain was just insurmountable. But what I did find was in co-ed softball, the torque is nowhere near the same thing. I had no power. I couldn't generate the power. I couldn't get around on it. My golf swing slowed up so much I started playing up a club or two, and I was still dealing with the back pain on a regular basis. But I was able to be at least semi-active, and it helped. But then my senior year came along. Now, as a disabled veteran, I was on a special program through the Veterans Administration, through the VA, that was helping put me through college. And in that program, my primary function was time, not finances. And that time came with a requirement of graduating early. Now, normally the time's not an issue, but I was going to be a teacher and I needed to get my master's in education. And that takes longer than a normal 4-year degree. It was going to take an extra 5 quarters, an extra almost year and a half. So I needed 5 1/4 years of education crammed into a 4-year period. To catch up, I was taking extra courses every single quarter and squeezing things in. And in that final push, I found myself overloaded in order to graduate on time, or the time that I needed to. But also I found myself doing a senior thesis that was insanely ambitious. I nearly earned an award on that one. I did get an honorable mention. And so I was proud of the work that I had done, but I was spending hours and hours and hours. In the end, I spent about 1,000 hours in libraries at state level, at the university level, searching archives, and I was a history major. Ultimately, the time constraints that I had, the job that I'd been working, I wasn't able to work during that term. But then especially the softball, I had to stop playing that. That last little piece of finding time to make food for oneself, that went away, and I started eating fast food. Almost every meal. About twice a day I was eating fast food, and that was my 2 meals a day. So I cut a meal out, keep the calories down a little bit, but it was nothing but processed fast food. And that was in the early, mid-2000s, where we were still just coming out of the portions being ridiculously large. I started packing pounds on pretty dang quick. I don't know exactly how much I gained over that period, but over that senior year and over my graduate studies the next year, I must have added 40 pounds. It was pretty bad, and I got to the worst point that I was ever at in my life by time I graduated, or by time I finished my master's program. I think I topped out at 188, maybe 189 at my worst point. I was not well fit. I was not active at all anymore. The coaching gigs were done when I finished college, and I was getting into teaching. I was also getting into teaching at the worst time to be graduating, when the global recession was just getting underway. It took me well over a year to find a job, and when I did finally find the full-time position, it was halfway around the world. And I ended up on the island of Saipan, Northern Mariana Islands, teaching high school history and English. Beautiful, tropical island. It was so amazing. My wife there. In fact, I'd only been there 10 days when we met. Within a month of being there, my health started to take a turn. Good and bad. One, I caught a local flu bug that ended up becoming strep throat, and I lost over 20 pounds. I could not ingest food at all. I couldn't keep anything down for about 5 days. I was in terrible, terrible shape, but I ended up losing a bunch of weight. So I almost took this positive from this negative. It was warm, it was tropical, and so the heat started to help me lose some weight. But the biggest thing, and something I hadn't done in years, I started playing soccer again and started coaching. I was coaching 7 days a week, either soccer, baseball, or basketball, but I was playing soccer 5 or 6 days a week, and eventually 7 days a week. My fitness started to return just naturally. Eating habits weren't great. What I was eating was not the best things for me, but the amount of fitness that I had slowly started to help knock those pounds down. And I started to get into a pretty healthy place. Got into the mid 140 pound kind of range. Never super fit again. But that's because I wasn't changing my diet. I spent 3 years on the island, and so returned to my hometown. I continued to play soccer. And that's where the twice a week thing has occurred from that point through now. So over the last 7 years, my fitness has been twice a week playing soccer/football. Indoor is what I switched to when I got back here. And so I play co-ed indoor at a fairly high level, but still relatively amateur level. That fitness has helped keep me fairly well in shape. Over the last 7 years, my diet has improved significantly. Also, I've taken it upon myself a couple of times to actually go on a diet, lower my calorie intake, lost some weight, put some weight back on. 2 times I've gained weight over these last 7 years. One, when I tore my calf muscle, I was totally out of action for a period of months. A, that ended a diet that I had been on. B, that ended all fitness that I was obtaining through activity. And then the second period has been COVID. Through lockdown, from March of 2020 till now, soccer was shut down for all or most of that time, and it's just starting up again. I gained 12 pounds since last year. My other fitness besides playing soccer has been that I coach still. That shut down in March as well. I'm semi-active as a coach, so it does help. It keeps me on my feet. I was teaching. I was on my feet all day. That 9-10 hours a day, every day, has turned into, well, now I sit in front of a computer most of the time. So that's a decrease in the amount of activity that I was getting. Besides participating in sport and coaching, the other big piece for me has been that I've tried to use a bike for my fitness. Now, 7 years ago when I first got back to the States, that's where I got a bike and started getting on there. But for me, I'm not a solo rider. I go out for a solo ride and I'm miserable. I don't know how to manage my effort. And so I push too hard. And then I'm suffering as a result, not having fun. I spent a lot of time encouraging my wife to get a bike and get active and join me and go with me, as I didn't have anybody else kind of fit the profile to ride with. And so my wife and I started riding, and she wasn't much of a fan. Also, she had never ridden a bike in her life, so she had no idea what she was up to. Active, yes. Play soccer with me, yes. Pretty good, pretty fit, pretty active, but biking, not her thing. So I'd always have to encourage and push and try to pull to get her to go along with it. Our activity level was fairly low, and so it helped, but it didn't help a lot. Now for me, I was loving it because I was getting fitness. I was getting to ride around. It was nice to see sceneries. It was nice to get out of the house. It was nice to be outdoors for a little bit. Soccer, indoor. Right? So it's the Great Northwest. It's so beautiful here. Weather's not always great, but getting that activity was a nice mix. Well, it became a mostly summer activity for us. We'd put it away and store it through the winter and spring. Bring it out again summer and through part of fall. And that was kind of our yearly go-to. And then one year she kind of sneakily just sold her bike. And then all of a sudden it was back to just me. And what do I do? Oh, 3 years ago I picked up a stationary bike. And ever since, that's been it. I've been on my outdoor bike twice in the last 3 years. The stationary bike, very generic, very basic, but it got me pedaling and it got me some exercise. And over the last year, that's about all I've gotten. And I've been recently averaging 1 to 2 hours a week. It's not a lot, but it was better than nothing. That ultimately is what brings me to this point now. 2020, not only a hard year for our emotional state, for our mental state, for our physical state. So 2021 is a year of hope for so many people. And you know what? I'm there. I'm right there too. It's been hard. It's been tough. And I have high hopes to get a bit of a rebound in 2021. And as something that is controllable, my mental and physical state, I'm taking control. And that's what we're here for. Hopefully you've enjoyed this look at my fitness history, and hopefully there's things that you can relate with. It is a struggle. I mean, I've been fit. I've been active most of my life. But in the 3 little windows where I've been less active, pounds just fly on for me, even when I'm watching what I eat. Activity is the only thing that has kept me fairly fit, or close to fit, or at least just overweight and not obese. And I'm pushing towards that obese, so damn it, it's time to take care of it. I'm Decathlon Gamer, thanks for tuning in. Be sure to hit that like button, and I'll see you next time as we continue our Zwift fitness journey. Have a good one, be safe out there, and bye for now.